Hey there, good evening, everybody. It is 6:15, so we are going to go ahead and begin the presentation here in just a moment. Thanks so much for taking some time to be with us this evening. Hope you are able to get around, talk to folks at the city, take a look at some of the presentation boards that are up here at the front. Really excited to be here with you this evening. My name is Martin Bartlett. I work with a firm called Consor. We've had the pleasure of working with the city for a while. We were actually in this room almost exactly a year ago. I think I see some familiar faces having a conversation about community attitudes, understandings, and priorities about creating a long-term, sustainable water future, not just for Kerrville, but recognizing that Kerrville is part of the broader Hill Country community. So really excited tonight to spend some time talking about the way this project could conceivably help support the city in achieving some of the community goals that were articulated when we were all here together about a year ago. We also know a lot has happened over the last year, and so we're going to take a little bit of time to hear from you as well if there's some interactive exercises about whether or not those priorities still hold true today a year later. So very excited to take some time with you all this evening. I'm going to go ahead and hand the mic to David Barrera from the City of Kerrville, who will go through some technical, thank you very much, who will go through some technical information about the project. I know y'all have tons of questions. David will be able to provide some technical information, and then we'll dive in, like I said, to kind of the goals. What are the community's goals, and how could this project help meet those goals? So.
All right. Thank y'all for being here. Wow, what a great turnout. Thank y'all for taking some time off of y'all's day to come over here and listen to our presentation on this Elm Creek pipeline project. I want to thank those in attendance. I know we have several staff members here. We also have members of our council. Council, if you would raise your hand. We have about 3 members: Councilmember McKinney, Councilmember Smith, and Mayor Herring. So thank y'all for being here, as well as other members of our staff, as I mentioned earlier. I've also noticed a couple of folks from different organizations from around here: Hill Country Alliance, Kerr County Alliance, Upper Guadalupe River Authority, Headwaters. So thank y'all as well for being here. It's going to be a team effort, so I'm glad y'all are here because we'll be collaborating on some ideas and thoughts moving forward with this project. With that being said, let's go ahead and kickstart the agenda real quick. We'll go over bottom line up front, cover some facts about this project. We'll go over Kerrville Water 101, as well as the project outline, some water planning that we have in place now, some water planning that we've had decades ago. Interactive exercise, we'll be doing that later. We'll have a break, and then what it means to keep the local water local. We'll follow that with another break, and then we'll do a Q&A with our panel. Hopefully we can get as many questions answered. However, we have, with this great turnout, we're gonna have quite a few questions we can't get to, but promise you we'll take those questions back to the office, and we'll find a way to get those out to you, whether it's through social media, our website, or even a phone call. Us here at Public Works and Engineering, we have an open door policy, phone, email. Please feel free to reach out to any one of us. With that being said, our panel here, as Martin mentioned, I'm David Barrera, Director of Public Works here. We have Chris Clark, our Assistant Director of Public Works. We have Daniel Bagat, our Public Works Administrator, and Kyle Burrow, who is our City Engineer. So that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So bottom line up front, Kerrville is not running out of water. We're not running out of water right now. This is not why we're having this project implemented. It's more of long-term planning for the future. However, this project can be implemented and be utilized in the near future as well, right? You know, this area, we do experience some severe droughts at times, so that's when we can utilize this as well. But it's not because we're running out of water. For decades, we've been investing in innovative solutions. One of the big innovative things we've implemented or brought on board was our reclaimed water, our reuse pond. That was big for us. That provides about 200 to 300 million gallons of water for irrigation to several customers that we have, as well as some, we use it in-house over at our plant for different processes. So we've also had different innovative on the water side as far as metering. We've had some smart metering that's been put in place throughout the city. We also continually upgrade our monitoring system of both water and wastewater through SCADA, supervisory control and data acquisition. We're able to tell in real time what the tank levels look like, what the lift stations, how they're performing. We continue to get innovative on that. And Elm Creek Pipeline, that builds on that legacy. Right? It's been here for several years before our legacy of planning. It's here now, and we don't plan on it stopping moving forward. We want to make sure this community is taken care of for many years to come, for many decades, many generations. So that's how we're here putting in the work. So that being said, next slide. Keeping local water local. It allows us to use our own highly treated water instead of sending it downstream. We do have to send some water downstream. However, whether we discharge it at our proposed outfall or the existing outfall, we still treat it to very, very high standards that are set forth by the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. It also allows us to replenish the Guadalupe River at Nimitz Lake with reclaimed water in times of drought. But I also want to mention that this project is not only for times of drought. There's times whenever we have mechanical issues. Some of our well sites, right? We do rely on the groundwater for some of our production. If we have a well that comes offline for whatever reason, we've had that in the past, we're able to supplement that water during those times of need as well. So it's not just for the drought, it's also for other mechanical issues and future growth for that matter as well. It also allows us to blend with natural river flows and is fully treated again before distribution. Just to compare, just the Nimitz Lake, about 273 million gallons, give or take, is what that impoundment holds on paper. And we're adding, if we were to add this effluent, it would be less than 1% is what we're proposing right now. Also, big thing here is as we look at protecting our natural resources, it is reducing or can reduce the dependence on the aquifers when the demands on them are at their highest during times of drought. So protecting the aquifer rather than us drawing from the aquifer when we can utilize this water is, in my opinion, it's a benefit for us, for the community, and again, protecting that natural resource. So as you look at our current water production, typically we're about 20% groundwater, and surface water is 80%. So our surface water is a river, lake, and our groundwater, of course, are active wells, an emergency well, and 2 ASR wells. But keep in mind, these two are what suffer during extreme times of drought, or even during drought. These are the ones that suffer. So many questions have been asked, right? What happens to your wastewater now? We treat 2+ million gallons per day, between 2 and 2.5. We are permitted to treat 4.5. So right now it's a little over 2. Some of that water goes into Guadalupe River right now. It flows downstream towards Canyon Lake. The other is treated water is supplied for irrigation. We do have about 7 customers that utilize our reclaimed water. We'll notice around town are satellite ponds that belong to those customers, and that's what's used in their distribution for irrigation. Because of Kerrville's proximity to the headwaters, we operate under one of the strictest wastewater permits in Texas. That's not going to change. I want to mention here that in order to operate a wastewater permit that is one of the strictest in the state of Texas, it takes competent operators to work at this facility to make sure we're in compliance. So we do have that in place right now. We have very dedicated employees some of them are here on both the water treatment plant as well as the wastewater plant. All right, so again, keeping local water local. This is sort of a snapshot of how the water diagram. We'll start off at the water treatment plant. That water is distributed throughout town, schools, churches, residential homes, commercial establishments or whatnot. And then it makes its way through our 27 lift stations, sewer mains, gravity mains, makes its way all the way down to the wastewater treatment plant. From that point, it is treated. As I mentioned earlier, some of that goes to Flat Rock Lake. And then what we're proposing is to, back that up. Some goes to Flat Rock Lake, and then the rest goes to our Kerrville Sports Complex is one of them. There's 6 other ones as well, but the proposed route is to extend the pipeline that goes from the Kerrville Sports Complex and run that about 1.6 miles towards Elm Creek Park. So that's what the project consists of. The discharge point that we're proposing right now as our starting point is off of Aspen, is where that discharge point is at right now, is what we're going to look at doing. All right, so project considerations. We do have some permits that we still have to to go after. We're going to look at our bed and banks permit, which allows us to secure that water that we're going to be discharging. It doesn't get accounted towards our water permit that we're utilizing at that time. We're hoping to keep this water isolated to belong to Kerrville. Also, the second discharge, as I mentioned earlier, we do have a discharge point right now. We do have a discharge permit. And in order to get this secondary outfall, if you will, it is going to require a modification to our discharge permit. On the technical side of things, we do want to assess Elm Creek Channel. I've got several inquiries coming in, is what is it going to do to the Elm Creek Channel? I still want to evaluate that channel from point A to point B. From that discharge point all the way to Nimitz Lake, I want to evaluate it, find out. We want to make sure that that water is being conveyed how it should. Is there any obstacles? Do we have to maybe consider a different discharge point further down? So those things we'll be looking at. I know we've had some calls or, as I mentioned earlier, inquiries about property value. Our intent is not to impact anybody in a negative way. Right? We want to keep this positive. So also many inquiries on emerging contaminants for PFAS. We're also we have that on our list as well. We want to look at stuff that we have to test for, that we're required for testing, as well as getting some baseline testing. And then, as we mentioned earlier, our 1.6 mile pipeline design. Important thing here is why we're here tonight is our ongoing engagement. I've visited with some of you guys earlier today, had some good conversations, and as I mentioned, it's not over with tonight. We want to continue that communication and answer questions moving forward and give updates accordingly. So that's the community engagement part. We want to keep our web page or websites updated accordingly as we move forward. And then also visit with some operational stakeholders. As I mentioned earlier, those folks are here with different organizations. I think that's important that we collaborate with these folks and get a I'm going to try and get like a stakeholder committee with Headwaters, UGRA, Country Alliance, Kerr County Alliance. And so we'll hope to hopefully get that Headwaters as well. And also been in conversations with several members of our community that are I would consider them subject matter experts on water quality. They've done projects throughout the country, in other countries as well. We had very, very informative conversations. Is Mr. Steve? Yeah, there you go. So I visited with you earlier. So we're looking forward to giving some plant tours, and I'd also like to invite him as part from an advisory role moving forward. So thank you for your input on that, sir. All right, so we'll move on to water planning. It's like a cycle, right? So everything that you're planning for water, you plan for it, you implement it, then you assess it, and you come back again. You keep on planning. So that's kind of the model that we have here. Some plans are looking forward to a 100-year planning horizon. That doesn't mean that it's not going to change. Things change. So long-range water planning relies on an iterative approach, constantly refining, updating, and modifying strategies, some of them that are realistic. Also, there could be new technology or just something new that comes across our way that we can take advantage of, and it may change our planning, right? But you got to start somewhere, right? So I think that's what we're doing right now. Moving on to some of the stuff we've done in 2008, we've got some water and wastewater master plans, been updated several times. We've also implemented some recommendations, including the new Ellenberger well, which is the picture right here on the right. Back in the day, we had those masks. Yeah, this well was broken in. We broke ground in 2020. Also, we've evaluated viability of securing more water rights from the Guadalupe River. That's not easy to do. No, there aren't many rights that are available. And you have to deal with the senior rights, junior rights. There's a lot of stuff that goes involved with obtaining water rights. But the key thing is evaluating what rights are out there. They may not be available, but you still have to know what's out there and see if there's anything that we can obtain. Key thing here in any strategy as far as water conservation is including revisions to our water conservation ordinance, right? So we've tightened it up a little bit, adjusted some of the stages that we have in place. We visited with our development services team to see how we We can address any new development coming in and make sure that we have low impact to our water, that's always being considered through various methods. Just prime example, landscaping alone, irrigation systems, all those types of things. We want to continue to look at that, as well as enforcing existing ordinances we have in place. All right, so moving on, 2020, we'll discuss long-range water supply plan that was adopted in 2020. We evaluated several strategies in this plan. Some were determined just to be infeasible or too costly. So we did do some updates again in 2025, and that's where we came about the project on Elm Creek Pipeline. That's where we're at today, is after the reevaluation. So here's some of the other strategies that we looked at. I wanted folks to realize that the Elm Creek Pipeline isn't the only project that we looked at. We've been looking at different strategies, different projects. What can we bring on board, what we can't? So this quick snapshot here, you look at that remote well field, the price tag of about $69.5 million. That'll require for us to acquire or lease, I believe, over 4,500 contiguous acres. That's hard to find. And so here in our area, it's hard to find that type of property. The other one was the DPR, direct potable reuse. That had a price tag of about 16.2, followed by the other pipeline route that we were looking at, which is the South Bank. Right, so that's the 7.6, and then the one that the Elm Creek is at about 3.1. One key thing to note here, though, is if you look at the I guess second from right, that column on the estimated water production, they all yield about the same. The bottom three, right, about 560 acre feet. Right, so an acre foot is about 325,000 gallons per acre foot. Right, so they all yield the same thing, but this important thing right here is the price per acre foot per year. Right, big difference. So that's how we landed on this pipeline project. All right, so why are we here tonight? So I will now turn it over back to Martin.
Thank you, David. All right, so there was obviously a lot of thought and science and planning that went in to get us here tonight. But what is incredibly important is we know that the engineers are thinking about the science and the technology and all of those important things, but absolutely central to the conversation is what are the community's priorities? As I mentioned, we were here a year ago, see some familiar faces, talking about what are the community's priorities for a sustainable water future moving forward. So what we want to do is, in addition to hearing from you questions about this particular project, we also want to take a moment to see, do those priorities that we heard a year ago, do they still hold up? Are those still the top priorities today? So if we take a look on the next slide, I will just remind you, if you might have participated last year about this time, we did what was called a 6-question survey, got hundreds of responses, and one of the very first things we asked in that 6-question survey was, what do you think should be the City of Kerrville's #1 priority? We made you pick one. Like, if you have to ratchet one of these up to the top, which would it be? Keeping water rates affordable, being a good steward of those ratepayer dollars that you pay, delivering the clear, great tasting tap water, ensuring an adequate supply, addressing some of those just operational challenges that utilities across the country face, including aging infrastructure, managing to meet the needs of a growing community, and protecting natural resources. What I want to share on the next slide is the findings that we got. This is not just from folks within the City of Kerrville, but this was also responses from all around Kerr County. Far and away, protecting natural resources emerged as the #1 priority. If people said, if you have to pick one thing, make sure you're protecting natural resources. Second to that, manage those water resources, manage infrastructure, invest in infrastructure to serve our growing community. And all those other things, delivering great tasting tap water, being good stewards of ratepayers' dollars, were all important, but they did not perform nearly as well as that idea of protecting the natural resources, the things we rely upon that make the hill country, and managing water resources for the growing community. So what we're gonna do on the next slide, if I can encourage you to get out your smartphone, we are going to do a quick interactive exercise. I think that QR code is probably big enough. Let me know if you have trouble getting it. If you do, you can enter that really long, really complicated URL into your web browser. Is anybody having trouble with the QR code? I'll give you guys a couple more minutes to go ahead and get logged into the site. And you should see a question that looks a lot like that question we asked in the 6-question survey last year. What I'll also share with you is when we put together invites and materials and we're working with the city on some information for the website, we asked these same questions. What is your number one priority? And we're gonna see if they all line up. I'm gonna go ahead, while y'all are doing that, I'm gonna switch over to a live tool that we use that will display the results in real time. All right. So if anybody else was having issues with, there we go. All right, you should see numbers begin to tick up in real time. So I know more than 4 people are gonna respond. So I'm gonna go ahead, give it a minute. We'll let those answers come in. 14, 18, 20, ticking up slowly. Going to give it a couple more minutes for folks to get in. But I will tell you, the thing that we're seeing here is the thing that we saw last year, is the thing that we saw when we sent out or placed a survey on the city's website. Protecting natural resources really is, at least among those of us in this room, a key priority for what should be, or a key point of agreement on what should be the city's #1 water priority moving forward. And interestingly, second to that is the idea of managing water resources and infrastructure to meet the needs of a community that is growing. So very fascinating to see that over the last year, there does seem to be some continuation of the belief that protecting those natural resources remains the #1 priority. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the next question. And this is one with certainly no right or wrong answer, and it's a very easy one. When you heard about the Elm Creek pipeline, before David and before you talked to his team, told you all about the science and the engineering and all of those pieces, what was your initial reaction? Was it a thumbs up, big thumbs up, or a big thumbs down, or somewhere in the middle? Going to give a couple more minutes for these responses to come in once we get past 50. All right, boy, the average response is a 3.3 out of 5. So very fascinating to see that, you can kind of see the line, more thumbs ups in those early days. So very excited to see that. And I will tell you, as someone who gets the opportunity to talk to communities around Texas about water reuse, this is very fascinating to see. I will tell you, a lot of communities maybe are a little bit more hesitant, a little more reticent. But I think it is very important and very exciting to see that in Kerrville, folks understand that this project, a project of this type, could conceivably help achieve their #1 priority. All right, so a lot of thumbs ups. We love a thumbs up, but also a lot of legitimate questions. And we want to make sure, as we mentioned, we expect to get a lot of questions this evening. We want to make sure that we get to the most important ones, the ones that are most key, as quickly as possible. So what I'm going to ask you to do is take a moment. Which of the following is the most concerning to you about reuse? It is totally fair and legitimate to have questions, to have concerns. We want to make sure that we're helping answer those questions as effectively as possible. So I gotta say, there's a lot of agreement in this room on so many things. I think it was fascinating. There's a lot of agreement on what should be the #1 priority, and a lot of agreement on what's the question that raises to the top of the heap: the health and the safety of the water supply. After that, we see the health and the safety of the waterways used for recreation, which absolutely makes sense. We've talked about preserving natural resources as one of the key community priorities. So the fact that those of us in this room view health and safety of the water supply first, followed by the health and safety of those waterways, the aquifers, the river, the lake, the things that make the hill country, not surprising that rises to the top as well. Okay, one last question, and then we'll take a break. What percentage of us, of those of us in this room, have used water that's been used before? And this is, all those other ones, there was no wrong answer. On this one, there is a right answer. All right. The answer is 100. 100% of us have used water that's been used before. And we're going to go through in a minute to talk a little bit about the shapes that takes, whether it is something as simple as recognizing that where Kerrville sits on the Guadalupe River, understanding that water that falls further out in the hill country has to make its way down through Kerrville, and that's what supplies a lot of the city's supply. And then the water that Kerrville uses gets sent downstream to somebody else. That's one version of it. There are other versions that you saw on the map up here. Other cities in Texas are doing something a little bit more dramatic, direct potable reuse, the idea of using that reclaimed water as a direct water supply source. So before we go any further, what I'm going to do is we're going to break for another quick 10 minutes. We will be around the room. If you have and are still holding on to one of those question cards, I'm going to ask my friends and colleagues if we can bring the box back down to the front. If you have that comment card, that question card still with you at your table, please go ahead, bring it down here to the front where we'll place the question box. Go ahead, get those in, and we'll reconvene in about 5-10 minutes. All right. Thanks to everybody, by the way, who took the time to come up to the stage, to talk to me, to members of the city team. We appreciate your feedback and are really excited to have the opportunity to continue the conversation as we go on. So one of the things we wanted to talk about that has been a kind of a focus of the project is the idea of keeping local water local, which we want to kind of talk through what does that mean and how could it conceivably help the city achieve the goals that the community has expressed. Ultimately, as David mentioned earlier, the project would allow the city to use its own highly treated wastewater rather than sending it downstream. Of course, as you saw in the map down front, the map in the presentation earlier, all of that water goes somewhere after it's treated. So the idea being keeping it here at home does provide a beneficial reuse to members of the Kerrville community. And as David also mentioned, replenishing the Guadalupe River at Nimitz Lake would happen most frequently if this project is constructed during times of drought, when we know the river is impaired, when we know that the aquifers are under their greatest strain. But a very important part of this project, as we mentioned, is the idea of replenishing natural flows, blending with natural flows before water is taken out and treated yet again. So we provided the map, and we will be available to answer questions after the presentation. Again, really showing that point that the water that comes down the river from upstream gets pulled out, gets treated, gets sent to you, and then gets sent either back to the river or to other uses in the community. Again, ultimately with the idea of reducing dependence on aquifers, with this project is built within drought situations. So again, this is about resiliency. David mentioned earlier, there's been some question, is the city of Kerrville running out of water? Ultimately, this project is not because the city of Kerrville is running out of water, but it is an innovative project to create a more resilient supply going forward. Next up, again, protecting natural resources. The idea of reducing reliance on the aquifer, on water that's coming downstream from up in the hill country, elsewhere in the hill country, when we know the river and the aquifer are under the most stress. Also important, keeping costs down. That's something that we heard. We went through the cost by cost, line by line of many of the different options, and some of them were infeasibly expensive. So the idea of balancing, being as responsible with your ratepayer dollars as possible. All of that science and all of that finance and all that stuff is great, but I recognize, you recognize, the most important part of the project is can the city safeguard you and your family? Is the water you drink going to be safe? It is now, and it will continue to be, and so I'm going to hand it over to David to talk a little bit about the steps the city takes in general, the steps the city is taking proactively, and some of the folks that actually make sure that work gets done.
All right, so safeguarding you and your family, important topic here. So Kerrville's wastewater treatment process operates under the highest level permit, as we said earlier in the state. And I'll continue to say that in order to operate something at this level, you have to have competent workforce. One of my goals as Director of Public Works, even years before, was make sure we retain great employees. It's very hard to find licensed operators, especially where we're located in our area, so that's key in any of our plants that operate with high-level permits. We're also proactively testing river water groundwater and wastewater for PFAS and emerging contaminants, including microplastics and pharmaceuticals. We also have an on-site lab operations that's regulated by the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. That area there is what Daniel Begat oversees. As a matter of fact, we had an audit today. It was already scheduled. We spoke earlier and it went very well, so glad to hear that. And so yeah, it was an audit today. Also, exceeding number of required A-license plant operators, I said earlier. An A-license operator is required to manage that site, right? But we don't just have one licensed operator. We strive to have higher education for our operators. We have several operators at both water and wastewater plants that are A license as well. There's A license, B license, C license. C is the very minimum, but we aim for having all of our operators reach their potential and get a higher license if possible. Right? It requires testing, requires hands-on experience, so I think you have like 2 years before you get your minimum license, but there's a lot of training, renewal hours. So the folks that are operating the plants, they're highly trained and highly licensed by the state of Texas. So their license is on the line every day. When it comes to reporting, their license is on the line, so take the job very seriously. Back up one more thing. So one of the things that these folks also take pride in what they do. I want to emphasize on that they work and live with their families here in Kerrville. They want to be able to treat the water, whether it's wastewater or drinking water, for the folks here in the community for decades to come, for generations. So that's a key thing I want the community to understand, especially those here in attendance, is that our folks do care about what they're doing. This one's on me, right? So simplified spectrum of reuse, sorry. It's somewhat of a snapshot of when you look at the, we'll start at the bottom right, direct potable reuse, right? Where it's water is purified to drinking water quality and supplied to customers, right? That's that DPR project. Most of those involved RO system, reverse osmosis, but focus here on the indirect potable reuse, which is wastewater treated, replenishes drinking water source, treated to drinking water quality and supplied back to the customers. Other factors that you can look at is environmental restoration, which is reusing water specifically to refill aquifers, nourish wetlands, provide recreation opportunities, and then also maintain wildlife habitats as well. That water that's getting put back is high quality. It cannot impact the wildlife. So here's kind of an idea of where the water cycle is with no new water in the world. We don't have any new water. So this Elm Creek pipeline sits sort of right here in indirect potable reuse, right? But it's also, you know, if we're able to discharge into Elm Creek, and it can also serve twofold, right? It can be used for environmental restoration as well. So we've got to keep that in mind. Again, keeping local water local. Snapshot, you know, I think we had a couple more items here. Downstream, other communities, Canyon Lake and the Gulf receive the discharge water. And I believe Canyon Lake has several wholesale distributors, wholesale customers of their water as well. They pipe water from Canyon Lake. I believe Bernie is one of them. And there's other cities throughout this, the area that do receive their water. But as far as the watershed, Guadalupe, you know, hundreds of square miles of farms, ranches. I mean, there's a lot of other things that we also have to keep in consideration as far as water quality. State of reuse. So this isn't the first project that we're proposing. We're not the first in the state. There's several that have done it, whether it's DPR or indirect or environmental restoration throughout the state. You'll see a couple there, and this doesn't take into consideration those that are being proposed, other cities that are considering these forms of reuse or these forms of projects, if you will. But I haven't gone further as far as these projects that are in place. Are they in place because they're immediate needs, because they're running out of water? Those are questions we have to ask. We're not putting this project in place because we're in immediate need of water. All right, time for another quick.
I'm going to say, I think we're ready for the Q&A if y'all are.
You ready? Yeah. Okay, let's do it. All right.
We're going to go ahead and keep rolling into the Q&A with our expert panel. Here you see the folks who are more than happy to answer questions, working for you every day here in the City of Kerrville, and really can provide some expertise. And we have the questions. Like I said, we know we have a lot of questions, so we grouped them into several different areas. Want to get to as many of the topics as possible. And I'll go ahead and let David take his seat. But thanks to everybody again for taking the time to be with us this evening and to provide your feedback in the room. Also, some of the questions that we received line up very neatly with the questions that we received via the website. So again, thank you everybody, whether you provided your comment electronically, via the website, or in person, via paper. A lot of the same questions coming up, and I think that goes to really understanding that questions across the state, across the country, have a lot of the same questions about reuse. I'll go ahead. One of the very first questions we got asked, and David, I think this may actually go to you, was what exactly is the alignment of the pipeline? I think we discussed, as we showed, there's a lot of work to be done. It's a little early to say exactly right here on exactly this date. I'll leave it to y'all to answer that. Oh.
I spoke a lot already. I'm gonna leave these other experts up.
Yeah, so the exact alignment is still to be determined. The surveyors are out on site looking at subsurface utilities, what conflicts we may have, where we can cross Town Creek underneath, conflicts with the sports complex, because we're gonna come out of that existing pond for their reuse and essentially go around the soccer fields. So we're gonna try to keep it within the streets where we have all of our other utilities, minus the green areas like the sports complex. And then we'll end up on, Crestwood, I believe. So discharge, that'll be one of the discharge points that we look at and modify within our current permit.
Another question we heard was, when? Is this starting next week? Is this starting tomorrow? And we're not, I want to make sure we really clear that up, that there's a lot of work to be done before anything moves forward, certainly on the ground out there in the field.
Yeah, so the idea with this right now is council authorized the design contract. We're going through environmental reviews, like I said, going through survey. We're still about 6 to 8 months before the design is completed. With that, we're still looking at funding resources. There's a large water infrastructure bill that we're looking to get 100% grant, so there will be no cost to the citizens of Kerrville if we can get that grant. And so that will also assist with the filter improvements that we have to do at the water plant just because of aging infrastructure. Pair that together, we think we've got a pretty good project. But we're looking at maybe by the end of this year before we even hear anything back from the Water Development Board on that grant application. In parallel, we're also, you saw in some of the slides, the bed and tank permit and discharge. We're running that through TCQ for approval and review and approval. That's going to be anywhere from 1 year to 2 years dealing with TCQ. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Another question that came up is what else was taken into consideration? What else was considered? Specifically, why can't we just drill an additional production well? Why not just go ahead, go after that groundwater that's out there? Why not invest in that rather than invest in a project like this?
So we are looking at additional wells. Alpine well is something that we're looking to try to get in the Ellenberger. This is really more sustainable. Headwaters restricts the groundwater wells, and one thing that we can control is how much water we treat going through our wastewater plant. So that's the big push for this. You saw the table earlier. The best bang for the buck is indirect to resupply our water impoundment area of Nimitz Lake during those very restrictive droughts like we've had the past couple of years.
One question we got as well a couple of times was about the impact on, and we saw this as well on the waterways piece. What about the plants, the wildlife, the aquatic life, the amphibians that may be living somewhere between where this water goes into Elm Creek and before it gets down to to Nimitz Lake?
So yeah, as far as the wildlife and the riparian environment's concerned, we've been discharging third-degree effluent from the water reclamation plant for a very long time into Third Creek. And if you haven't, you should go get a tour of the creek down there. It is absolutely gorgeous. Animals of all types, amphibians, invertebrates, birds, deer. It is an absolute gorgeous habitat, and I imagine it's going to be the exact same wherever it's released. So I don't think we'll have an issue with that.
Another question that we got was, we appreciate the birds and the fish and the wildlife, but also what about the people? What tools will the city use on a going forward basis if this project is built to make sure that the water that's delivered is safe, clean, reliable, even if this project comes online?
So if all right, can you hear me? Yeah, maybe. All right. As far as that's us operating under our permits. If I understand that question right, as far as protecting the quality of water, how to protect the
and also
community.
what's going to be done on an ongoing basis to make sure that, we know we have procedures and processes in place,
Right.
what's going to be done to make
Right,
sure
so
that we're living up to that standard.
Right, so we operate under permits, right, at both plants, and that's going to continue to happen. And as regulations change, we have to start testing annually or whatever the permit calls for, whether it's through EPA or the state. We're going to continue to follow that. And then if we have to go above and beyond that and we get some baseline measures, we can implement that as well. But that's part of us doing our due diligence moving forward. So that way the communities understands that we're checking all the boxes. But most importantly, we will have to operate under our permit and whatever requirements are at that given time.
Another question, what does this mean for the existing reclaimed water customers? Do they get cut off? If, for example, you're using the water for irrigation purposes?
I'm sorry, I'll be honest. I have a hard time hearing.
So for those customers that are using water, for example, they're using reclaimed water now for irrigation, what happens for them if this project moves forward?
What happens to them? There isn't any impacts to them. I mean, it's we look at what their volumes are, what they're using annually, or what they're using in general, whether it's daily, monthly. I mean, we keep track of that. It's actually on a monthly, what these customers are using. So there are certain contracts we have in place, certain amounts that we are obligated to provide to them, but we are evaluating contract amounts, what they're actually using, and see what that does to the rest of the available reclaimed water that we have, whether it's maybe bring on another customer or just get creative. But this system right here gives us plenty of opportunities moving forward where we can get creative and make use of this water. Hope I answered that.
Yes.
Good? Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
One thing that also came up a couple of times is, with whom are we coordinating? We mentioned that there are a lot of steps between now and when a project might be designed, including permitting, including that coordination with operational stakeholders out there in the world. Can you talk a little bit about what all has to take place between now and before we ever get to a point where there is a bulldozer rolling out there to build a pipeline?
I'll take that. So as far as, I think we mentioned that in the slide earlier, as far as stakeholders in our area, obviously there's the regulatory side of things, right? With the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, or TCEQ, there's EPA, so there's that permitting process that has to happen, right? Those are your firm actions, but then there's also things that happen in between. That's where we mentioned the stakeholders we have here, whether it's through Headwaters, Hill Country Alliance, the other folks I mentioned earlier, UGRA. We'll be doing some other evaluations on the drainage channel, water quality. So there's quite a bit that still has to be done, but as far as the hard actions, as I mentioned earlier, those are the permitting process that still have to occur.
This may be more of a comment than a question, but I think it's one worth talking through. The idea that once this project is in place, for example, typical reclaimed water customers that use it for irrigation are required to post a sign saying, don't drink this water. What will be done, because that water is treated to a different standard than, for example, direct potable reuse water, what type of educational opportunities might exist? What type of educational opportunities might the city consider to make sure that folks understand what they can and can't do around the water that comes from the pipeline?
So I think all that falls under Chapter 210, as far as what the existing customers can or cannot do with the reclaimed water. There's a lot of requirements, whether it's the proper signage, the color of the pipe. We have to have a map of their irrigation footprint, but that's something that we're also going to evaluate as far as this being a discharge point. What standards or what safeguards do we have to put in place or adhere to from point A to point B, right? Being the discharge point to Nimitz. There could be some things that we may have to do, so that's something that we also be looking at.
Another question that came up, I think there's a lot of interest in making sure that the city is being a good steward of ratepayer dollars. Was this only picked because it was the cheapest option that was examined, was a question that came up.
So the question was, did we choose this project because it was the cheapest?
Yes, of those that we showed.
No, not necessarily. I wouldn't say it's just we didn't look at all the strategies and say, okay, what's the cheapest? It's more cost effective, right? What does it yield per dollar, right? Or this dollar per acre foot, what does that yield? And also the reality of it. Can we do this project? Should there be maybe another project that's, $10 million that it's a little bit harder to obtain? That's something we can look at later on. This is the first one that we're going to look at. This is the first one that we're looking at getting implemented. As I said earlier, this has been part of planning many years back. So we'll continue to plan. If there's another opportunity moving forward, we'll take advantage of it. There's always funding that could be available, external funding that we can utilize to take on some of these more expensive projects. But to answer the question, we chose this project. It wasn't because it was the price tag on it.
Can I take a quick moment to remind everyone that if you have questions, kerrvilletx.gov/Elm Creek Pipeline. There are a lot of questions that we got to. We covered all of the main themes. There may be some more direct questions that we will including in our frequently asked questions section on the website, kerrvilletx.gov/Elm Creek Pipeline. You can also, if you have a smartphone, scan there and get over to the website as well. So gentlemen, thank you so much for your time this evening and your willingness to answer questions. This whole group of people will be available to answer any questions for the next couple of minutes down front in front of the stage. Please also take a moment to go ahead, take a look at the boards if you didn't get a chance to earlier. Also, I would encourage you, go ahead, visit the website, bookmark it. A lot of good information will be posted there, both coming out of this meeting and moving forward as things advance. So, very good. Thank you all so much.
All my memories, they gather around her, minus a lady